Welcome. This is your host Yusuf, and today we welcome someone who has spent her career helping people elevate their health, longevity, and overall sense of well being. Judy Gaman is the host of the Stay Young America podcast, a 7-time author, an accomplished speaker, and the CEO of Executive Medicine of Texas. Her work explores how modern life has glamorized exhaustion, glorifies schedules, and normalized burnouts. In this conversation, we dive into why busy has become a destructive badge of honor and how we can reclaim peace, clarity, and presence when life feels chaotic. Judy, I welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm really glad that we're talking about this because I think it's become just a pandemic of issues, exhaustion and burnout, like you mentioned. All of these things are so unhealthy and they have lasting effects.
So, so, Judy, you call busy a four-letter word. What do you believe makes our obsession with being busy so damaging, both mentally and physically?
Well, I think it's, multifold. I'm a Generation Xer, so I grew up with a mom who was a single parent, and I know we had a lot of that single parent thing going on, especially in the 80s, 90s, continuing today. And really watching our parents work so hard and also the culture seemed to shift where it became very important for us to have, bigger, better, and instant. And those things have only gotten worse with, I say we're living in the prime age and prime being more like Amazon Prime. We want what we want and we want it now. But the long-term effect of what we're doing to get it is the real issue.
Hmm, true. Was there a moment in your own journey when you realized that busyness was costing you something essential?
Yeah, for sure. There's an old saying that if you don't slow down and you keep going, God has a way of slowing you down. And that's kind of what happened to me. I was going, flowing. I had wearing that 60-hour a week badge of honors and just really working super hard. Abnormally, but not even recognizing that it was abnormal. And I met someone who was over 100 years old. Her name was Lucille Fleming, and she literally changed my life. I was interviewing her for a different book called Age to Perfection: How to Thrive to 100, Happy, Healthy, and Wise. And I interviewed several people over 100. And so the good thing that she came into my life right when she did, because I really got to take a step back from what I was doing and see more of what is important as far as wisdom and what a life well lived looks like. And she had been a woman in her life. But then I still was working ridiculous hours and I came down with Lyme disease and it stopped me dead in my tracks. Here I was working on a book. I was, growing a company, all of these things. And suddenly I got very, very ill, like can't get out of work. 6 weeks I had to take off of work. My elderly father came and said, I'm gonna be your chauffeur. I'm gonna, take you around where you need to go and make sure that you heal and heal completely. And I think that was one of those things where, God just comes and says, hey, you know what? All right, time to time to slow. You didn't listen. When I sent you the small warning size, though, it's gonna take us something a little bit bigger, and that was kinda the moment for me, the catalyst change.
True. And many people confuse productivity with constant motion. How do you differentiate meaningful engagement from the frantic pace many of us might fall into?
Well, this is true that people think that the busier I am, the more productive I am and the more successful I am, and that's, I think, why I led with busy is a four-letter word, because it really is. It is the big lie. I think that this became very popular, this idea of being busy, when multitasking, which is a giant lie, multitasking came. and you saw people putting it on their resumes. You had people interviewing people saying, well, can you multitask? I'm going to expect you to do 20 things at one time. But the science doesn't support that. We know now that you cannot do multiple things. You can't even do two things at one time. Your brain will switch back and forth between whatever else you're doing. So the idea that you can accomplish more by doing more is not true. We've all heard the jack of all trades, master of none. And that really is what tends to happen with our brains, where we're trying to do too much. Think of it like a computer. If you're on the computer and you start opening window after window after window, I mean, right now I look at the top of my computer and I see I've got multiple windows open. My computer's having to work so much harder to really go back and forth to these different apps or websites and so forth. And, our brains have to work extra hard the more we're taxing them to switch back and forth. And what we fail to do is say it's time to reboot. It's time to close the windows, turn our brain off a little bit and to relax. It's in those moments that we find actually that our brain works so much better. How many times at Executive Medicine of Texas have we seen executives where we're like, you have to take a vacation. Like, we're going to write you a prescription. You have to for a vacation if that's the only way we can get you to take some time off. And then when they come back, they say, oh my gosh, my first week back was my most productive week. I came up with incredible ideas. And I maybe they saved the company. Maybe they changed the version of them and who they wanted to be. Why is this? This is because they allowed their brain to reboot. They allowed their brain to literally shut up just long enough to fire back up on all cylinders.
Mm. It might seem that you are not doing something, but taking rest, having that pause, is so essential that when you get to the work, when you get to your daily routine, you are filled with more soul to it. And that's when you start working on a whole different level.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an executive coach once, and she would always say, I want you to practice the pause. And I always thought in the beginning, that is so corny. What is she telling me to do? And she's like, you actually have to practice it because your brain is not used to pausing. And if you're not used to saying it's okay to stop thinking, uh, and take in some deep breaths, maybe meditate, read scripture, whatever the person's way of relaxing is. If you aren't used to doing that, then your brain will want to fill in the blanks. We see this so much with patients that they've gone for so long that when they try to relax, their brain runs away with all these ideas. They try to go to bed and they can't go to bed because their mind won't shut off. So, it's important to shut your mind off to give your heart a rest because your mind and your heart are so connected and it's exhausting and the whole body is connected. So when you're overworking or overtaxing any one area of the body, it's going to affect the rest of the body.
True. The connection that you just built of heart and mind, that your brain has to stop so that your heart can rest as well. That's really brilliant, and I have listened it for the first time in my life, and that is so deep in so many levels.
It is one of those things that the first time I had heard that saying, I felt it. I felt it on like, almost like my heart was saying, "Yes, please. Listen to this. Like, yes, please. I need a break. I need a break." I love that, analogy, but, we're talking about the whole body. I think it's really important too that we don't forget the guts, Our heart, our brain, and our intestinal system all connected. We know that, the microbiome biome within the gut, within the brain, they're really connected. When your gut is off, this is when we really if you are prone to mental illness, your mental illness will be exacerbating and becoming so much worse. And if you have a healthy gut, you tend to feel healthier all over. So, you know, as a as a CEO at Executive Medicine, one of the things that we really, really focus on with our patients is let's look at everything about your body. Let's get the big picture and let's figure out how to get all the systems working together really well. How to get at your peak health. And it does include, the mind and the body and even to some degree the spirit, because if people aren't resting, they're not giving themselves permission to take a break, then they just lose their glow about them.
True. And Judy, you have led organization and worked with high performing individuals. What patterns do you notice in people who feel trapped by their own schedules?
Oh, wow. I'm glad you brought up that there's patterns because it's so true. One of the first things we do is we take a 28, could be 32-page questionnaire because it's one of those learning questionnaires. Depending on how they answer one question, it might pop up another question. And I think if we would lay out these thousands of questionnaires, what we would see, tens of thousands of questionnaires, we would see patterns of I'm not sleeping well. I feel anxious. A lot of even very, very successful, busy entrepreneurs and business people turn to alcohol. Maybe they're drinking alcohol at night because they just can't shut their brain off. We see a lot of joint pain because the body, like that book says, the body keeps score. So if you're stressed out all the time, it's going to show up in different parts of your body. It's going to show up maybe in your knees or your shoulder, or your elbows and your wrists and different places. Headaches. These are the kinds of things that we see. So body aches of some sort, lack of sleep. A lot of times people are really afraid that they are coming down with something like Alzheimer's or dementia because their memory is slipping. But again, it back to having too many windows open at the same time. And your brain's just so overtaxed that you tend to forget things because you can't multitask that many things. Matter of fact, you can't multitask at all, but we just think that we can.
True. You spent years studying longevity. How does chronic busyness impact longevity? And what changes can help restore the balance?
Yeah, I think this goes back to when I was studying the people over 100 years old. I mean, they did know this one thing, especially Lucille, and I talk about this in my book, Love, Life, and Lucille. The the thing that she said, and I love this, and it followed suit with so many of those centenarians, is, "When I'm tired, I rest." That just seems so foreign, right? Do we even allow ourselves to say, "I'm tired"? Because how many times have we heard somebody say, "I'm just gonna push through, I'm gonna power through this." They're drinking their energy drinks. They're doing whatever it takes to stay awake and keep going. In Japan, they actually have a diagnosis they put on death certificate, "Worked to death." And this is the thing, and it literally can go on the death certificate. This is the Japanese word, but it translates to "work to death." And that kind of culture, although we don't put that on our death certificate, I feel like we need the whole world really because we become so global. But I think we need to recognize that you can work yourself to death. Just like you can die of a broken heart, or you can die of grief, you can die of overexhaustion, overtaxation of the mind and body.
Wow, this is so enlightening to me because I personally, I like just you mentioned, I have this thing that I won't get down. There's this dog in me that will do anything, won't sleep, have all nighters, but will do the job that he has been assigned.
Well, I think that part of that's probably your upbringing. We were raised with a strong work ethic. Sounds like we're very similar in that sense. Even when my parents were divorced, my dad was the same way. He worked, worked, worked. He would go out of town and he would work out of town. And because he was out of town, there was nothing else to do but work. So he would work these 60, 80-hour weeks. pour himself in the get up and do it again the next day. And so we model ourselves sometimes over what we know. I I remember as a child, my mom, like, was adamant that nobody should sleep past 7 AM. It didn't matter if I came in, maybe I had, an activity, or maybe when I was young, I also had a job, so maybe after school, my work job didn't end till 11, but by God, I was gonna be up at 7 AM because, she really firmly believed that half the day was gonna be over. So, I think we model these things that we've learned behavior. We learn how we feel about sleep, we learn how we feel about work, how we feel about money, how we feel about relationships from the things that we witness at such a young age.
True. Judy, are there any ways that our listeners can connect with you?
Sure. Well, if you're interested in learning more about executive medicine of Texas, we see people from all over the globe. You can go to Texas, so EMTEXAS.com and learn about that. Or you can go to judygaman.com. I speak all over the globe. So if you're interested in having me as a speaker, you can go to JUDYGAMAN.com, judygaman.com.
I'm sure our listeners would connect with you. Judy, is there any last message that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I wanna leave you with this, and I think it's perhaps the most profound thing that I learned when I spent some time with Lucille Fleming from the time she was 100 to the time she was 104, and that is, no matter where you are in life, no matter your age, your circumstance, if you have breath in you, you have a purpose. So find out what that purpose is and live that purpose out.
Mm. Thank you for such a grounding and insightful conversation. And to our listeners, if today's discussion nudged you to rethink your relationship with busyness, take that as an invitation to pause. Peace doesn't emerge from a lighter schedule, it comes from a clearer intention. Step back from the noise, reclaim your presence, and choose a life that nourishes rather than depletes you. Your calm begins the moment you stop wearing that busy badge and start honoring the word of a balanced life. Until next time, stay calm, stay relaxed, and I'll see you in the next one.